Anton, Professor Anton Berns from Cancer Institute in Amsterdam. Thank you very much indeed for just telling us a little bit about Eurocan platform today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's a year old. We're here in Berlin to look back and see how things are going. You are one of the masterminds from even before it started. What's your impression?
Well, actually, my impression is that things go well, in the sense that, what we planned originally were a couple of things which we found really important, which is that we establish platforms on which we can jointly analyze patients. And secondly, that this would lead to maybe the initiation of clinical trials that would really use the platform, which means not only the technology, but also involve different institutions that contribute patients. And in that way, do precisely what we want, actually.
And that's worked. That's been achieved already.
That works. It's amazing that it works, because in principle, if you look what happened, is that a couple of findings in the laboratory, exciting findings, that immediately elicited the opportunity for doing clinical trials. And so what happened is that few of the institutions that had the patients, they would bring these patients into that activity, and now we have a level of stratification that makes it possible in a short period of time to do something, and I think that's very exciting.
And a couple of examples, be René Bernard's and
well,
EGFR.
I think that's one of them. It's the colon cancer, for example, with RAF and EGFR, which I think was a surprising observation made in the laboratory. And so normally we know that colon cancer has usually a lot of KRAS mutations, and a very tiny fraction has RAF. And so everybody thought this is wonderful because we have inhibitors against RAF, and this is going to work for that group of patients, and doesn't do a thing. Yeah. And so the screen René performed showed why that is, because there's a feedback loop which now causes overexpression of the EGFR receptor. Yeah. And here is the opportunity. We have drugs for both, and so now you can use that combination and see what happens. And I think that's a very exciting possibility.
And it'll be record quick time if we get into the clinic, in the next quarter or thereabouts. That will be
I think
really impressive.
Yes, and we what is at the moment, it depends on whether we can get the drugs, because this is always the issue, of course, for multiple companies that have to participate, and I can see their hesitation there, but nevertheless, I think this will happen, and this type of collaboration will happen more and more, and that will be a great advance, because a few of those examples also will accelerate, the enthusiasm, not only for Eurocan, but also outside, seeing that this type of collaborations can work and that make a difference.
I was taken also by Caldas' work from Cambridge. I mean, that's interesting, because he's going back to look at an mTOR pathway along with an old-fashioned drug called tamoxifen, which is as old as I am.
Yes, exactly. So, well, that's the other advantage, I think, why it's so important to put a lot of effort on diagnostics, because now we have started recognizing small groups of patients for which we realize that we have drugs on the shelf, and that it's a matter of using the right combinations that might make the difference. So I think that, I hope, will be certainly something we keep emphasizing, is improving diagnostics, because that makes it possible to take advantage of all these drugs and compounds that have been shelved in the past. And so that's a great opportunity, I think.
Now, within the structure of Eurocan platform, as well as these interinstitutional platforms, there is a scientific committee, and you chair that.
Yes.
And that is the arbiter of what gets done between the centres. How's that going?
Yes, so we have regularly meetings, actually, or teleconferences, and what we do is we discuss the proposals that are put forward. And obviously the way we look at that is that we want to see that these proposals, first of all, are innovative, and secondly, that they engage members of this platform. So we are somewhat reluctant to say, well, if people introduce their own trial they were doing in their own place, and that's the only thing what's actually where they ask support for, then they would say, well, do it, it's great, but we want now to visualize that this platform can collaborate so that we take advantage of the expertise that is in the different locations.
Sure. There was a lot of discussion about whether we could afford the new medicines and the new diagnostics in 10 years' time when they come out. What's your view about that?
Well, I think, you know, my view is that we desperately have to invest in diagnostics in order to afford the treatments. Yes. And because the consequence will be, hopefully, that we are only going to give the expensive drugs to patients that will have advantage of that. Sure. And I think that's not what we're doing now. So now we get these extremely expensive treatments, and most patients don't profit. Sure. And so that's where the change has to be. And the diagnostics, I think, that's going to be cheaper and cheaper. Sure. I mean, you know, soon we can do sequencing of, you know, RNA, DNA of a patient for a small amount of money. Yeah. That's equivalent to a pathology analysis 10 years ago. Sure. So I think there is optimism there.
And with a shortage of pathologists, the more of that technology that comes in, the better.
Yes, this could be, although I would like to see that the pathologists, that we keep them for the time being. And that I think it's really a problem at the moment, because it is, of course, also to take the right, you know, samples from pathological specimens. We need somebody who looks at it still,
so we need more pathologists.
Yes.
Tom, thank you so much for giving us a few moments of your time, and we'll check on the progress in 1 year's time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.